Hey there folks, and welcome to this video. Here I'm going to be discussing Haas F1 Team, Nikita Mazepin, F1 and the FIA. And I'm going to get right into talking about the basis for today's video, which is a statement which reads as such. Haas F1 Team would like to reaffirm that Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher will form its driver lineup for the 2021 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. As per the team's previous statement regarding the actions of Nikita Mazepin, this matter has now been dealt with internally and no further comment shall be made. For those of you unaware, on December 9th, Haas released a previous statement regarding Mazepin being investigated internally, following the posting on his Instagram story of a video in which a man who appears to be Mazepin is groping a woman in the back of a car. And before I get into giving my own kind of thoughts, my own kinds of opinions and reflections, I'm going to recommend you also look further outside of this content. Because the last time I did a video about Mazepin, it got into 5 figures in terms of the viewership. But the overwhelming majority of those viewers were men. And I don't know what kind of content they're also watching, but I noticed when I looked this up, my video was in front of a lot of content produced by women on this topic. And for me, that's horrible. Because when it comes to talk about the likes of sexual assault, especially in this circumstance, it is, in my opinion, tantamount to listen to a woman talking about it. Because even if I'm talking about any kind of personal experience of sexual assault, it's not going to have the same kind of perspective as a woman talking about sexual assault, especially a woman who works in motorsport. So in preparation for this video, I was watching a Beth F1 vid talking about Mazepin. This was released around the time of the December 9th statement. I read a blog written by Formula Amelia, and I read an article written by Hazel Southwell. I recommend you check them out. I recommend also, if you're looking to diversify your content, and I strongly recommend you do, in regards to women talking about motorsport and issues in motorsport that affect women, check out F-Series and the people associated with that brand. So let's now talk a little bit more about my own personal reflection. And firstly, F1 is a very, what I would describe as a rich, cishet white man sport. Motorsport generally is. Sport generally is. Where men who are white, who were assigned male at birth, are the people who largely call the shots, and they usually have the money and the backing to go through. And F1 is dominated by it, motorsport is dominated by it, and sporting generally is, but from my kind of personal understanding of it, it is sport, then motorsport, then Formula 1. As in, sport generally has less of this than motorsport has kind of more, and the most kind of concentration you'll find in the upper echelons, the likes of Formula 1. Because that's where a lot of the money is. That's why F1 also has things like problems regarding racism that it doesn't really discuss. And there are several ways in which I feel like this manifests itself. One is the continued employment of Mazepin. Another is the statement saying it's been dealt with internally, no further comment shall be made. Because there's been no statement for conclusion. Imagine the uproar that people had earlier this year when Ferrari had a confidential settlement with the FIA about the legality of its engine. Now, imagine that kind of uproar was even remotely brought in this debate. It isn't, but it really should be. Because there's a difference between technical regulations and allegations of sexual assault and sexual misconduct. Which, against Mazepin, there are more than a few. And let's also think about the fact that this has largely been framed around Mazepin. Mazepin's own apology didn't include an apology to the woman in the video. And again, that's something that you don't really think about, do you? He's made some kind of statement, but he hasn't made a statement talking about the woman in the video. Or apologising to the woman in the video. Which, arguably, he should have. And it deprives a woman of that kind of agency in this discussion. Which, well, that's horrible. It's not something that I can really talk about in a sense perspective because I'm a man, but if you look at women who are talking about this, one of the key things they look at is the fact that it's not really discussed the fact that this was committed against a woman, and the woman herself isn't really discussed. Heck, because even though I'm following this quite intently, there's part of the thing of don't name the survivors. But even in a lot of this coverage that you see, the woman isn't named. And that, again, in itself is a problem. I mean, there are many, many problems with things such as the signing of Mazepin. Me, as an LGBT plus person, I can remember him making the comment on George Russell's Instagram post, the something about coming out. Now, whether or not George Russell is a member of the LGBT plus community or identifies in such a way is a separate discussion. You simply don't have people outing other people. Especially in a straight-dominated sport such as Formula 1. And Mazepin doesn't care, supposedly. And the importance there is supposedly. Thinking about Beth F1's vid, one of the big things she said is she has to be aware of the kind of content she's making and the kind of response it can have. I think she finds that more so being a woman. There are lots of people, particularly men, who look to belittle women in motorsport. And for me, I'm just aware from a legal standpoint. In my previous video on Mazepin, and even in this one, I've said depicting someone who appears to be Mazepin. Because I'm aware that Josh Revel had to take down a video to talk about the leader. Because the leader threatened a lawsuit, supposedly. And yeah, this is the problem. When you've got people with such money, what is often described colloquially as more money than sense. When you've got someone that's like the son of a Russian oligarch, or you've got a Russian oligarch looking at your video, they'll be able to destroy you, and you won't even be able to put up a penny to fight a legal battle in such a way. Because they can go defamation here, libel here, and there you are, you're done. And that's another kind of position of privilege that we don't really talk about. And one really should. Because we don't know who was on the board in this investigatory panel. We don't even know if there was an investigatory panel. For all we know, management, like Gene Haas, had a look at this and went, well, Mazepin's staying. Because they don't want to answer any questions. They don't want any questions asked at them about this. They don't want to answer them. For all we know, what happened was Mazepin got a slap on the wrist. All that happened was Dmitry Mazepin paid a little bit more money. All that happened was nothing. And that's the key point here. We don't know what happened. We don't know what this panel was. We don't know if there were women on this panel. We don't know if there were women who, particularly in perspectives as survivors of any kind of sexual assault or any kind of abuse. We don't know. And we probably never will. And I'm not going to end this by calling for an F1 boycott, because as much as boycotts can be effective, you need to figure out what kind of boycott we're doing. And sadly, F1 doesn't really care about the fans in terms of a financial perspective. We're not the ones who are bringing in the money, not to them directly. Maybe if you've got an F1 TV subscription, you buy anything off the F1 store, like a Iron Cross mask, Kimi Raikkonen. But F1 doesn't really care about that kind of direct money because it's not the biggest thing that makes up the money. That's usually the deal, the licensing, the sponsorship. In the year if we race this one, you have Aramco plastered everywhere. They announced the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Those are the things that bring in more money than actually committing to a agenda to help improve diversity and combat discrimination in the sport. And let's round this all off by saying we're coming to the end of 2020. Not really anything has been done for the Re-Races 1 message apart from vague things of, oh, Chase Carey said 7 digits worth of money is going to be committed. F1 is still really not looking at having a woman racing in it for the foreseeable future. There's the Girls on Track initiative, which is not really talked about in massive senses. But before we're having a woman back on an F1 grid or even competing in an F1 weekend, Mazepin's been signed. I don't know, for me, as somebody who is quite politically progressive, I'm outraged. But... and I personally can't even remotely begin to properly imagine this. Imagine the impact on young women. Young women who are F1 fans. Young women who want to get involved in F1. Either as team personnel, as somebody working in the paddock, or as a driver. Imagine the message this sends. Like, imagine that. That is horrible. Horrible is a massive understatement. We don't race this one. In fact, I think it's gotten more leverage since that logo's been taken back by the fans in the We Say No to Mazepin campaign. What a dark day for Formula 1. Honestly.